Hello again. We are today celebrating Epiphany. The church worldwide celebrates Epiphany, which is the three wise men who discover the infant Jesus. And they choose, because of a dream, not to return to Herod. They follow a star. And I would like to share some thoughts with you about the star and the dream they had. First, hear the word of God. It comes from Matthew's account of this story, 2nd chapter, first 12 verses. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And called together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet, 'And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judea, are by no means the least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel.'" Then Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid homage to him. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. Now, some thoughts on a star and a dream. I'd ask you to begin your thoughts today by thinking of your own personal faith story. This is the path that you took to find your personal understanding of who you are in the world, how you got here, and what you expect the future to hold for you. Each one of us has a unique faith journey, as unique as your own fingerprint is unique to you. In today's gospel story, a star comes to symbolize a bright new world, a universe before us by that one star. A star opens to us a whole new galaxy of possibilities, like a rainbow. And then, with the universe open to us, we can dream, and a dream awakens us to a reality previously outside waking experience. Today's story of the Epiphany of the Magi incorporates both the star and the dream as evidence of great things to happen. And a dream, in this case, is a warning to avoid an unseen, previously unknown danger. An epiphany is an awakening to a new understanding or a reality. It's an aha moment. It's a now I get it, now I understand. On my recent holiday, I took my 8-year-old grandson to a Barnes & Noble, and we sat down at a small table, and just above us was another table. And at that table was an older couple. Both of them had white, beautiful hair, and they were reading books. Apparently a couple. As we sat down, my grandson said to me, "Grandpa, I'm afraid of old people like you." And I looked at him and I said, This may be a teachable moment. And we had a long discussion about how all people, if they're fortunate, mature and are able to develop wrinkles. As he said, our faces of old people are all scrunched up and wrinkly, and I'm afraid of that. For the Magi, everything in their lives changed as they gave over their wealth to honor a child. What had been important no longer held any significance for those men. I'll share with you how the Epiphany changes everything about the way in which we understand life. And I'm referring to the capital E, Epiphany. Imagine, if you will, a timeline. In our culture, as in Herod's culture, at the beginning of that timeline, we are born, and at the end of the timeline, we die. In the middle, we do what we do in life. We grow, we mature, we go to school, we get educated. Perhaps we might find a mate. We might have children. We might possibly think about retirement, and we might put aside a certain amount of money so that we will be able to care for ourselves in retirement, whatever retirement means. And then, at the end, we die. We live in a culture similar to the culture Herod lived. He feared that a baby would diminish him. He feared anything that would take away from him his power, his authority. So he feared this new thing which was happening, over which he attempted to exert control. He wanted to kill it. The writers of Matthew included the story of the Magi in their version of the good news. The Magi were non-Jewish, Gentile foreigners. The Magi were the ones who discover the Christ child and take that revelation back to their own countries by means of a dream they knew to be true, and they acted upon it, therefore saving the infant's life. Their curiosity led them to experience this aha, capital E, Epiphany, this revelational moment. Their epiphany is our epiphany. When we find ourselves as our Creator knows us and we realize God is within us. When that happens, our search for meaning in this life takes a radical shift. We, like the Magi, are awestruck by this reality that we are sacred. As the Christ child, the infant, was created in the likeness and the image of the Creator God, we were as well. Then we existed before our physical birth. From before the beginning of time, we were with the Creator God, and we will exist to go beyond the end of that line, our physical death, into and back to our Creator for all time, for all eternity. Epiphany puts a lie to the finite timeline of life, the birth and the death timeline Herod and so many of us fear. When I was in the 9th grade taking algebra, I experienced a small E epiphany. During that 9th grade, I took algebra, and I was most of the year stumped in terms of my understanding algebra. I went to my father, who was a scientist and an engineer, and I expected that he would be able to help me. He tried, but he couldn't dumb it down enough so my brain at that time could understand it. What to do. I was getting more and more anxious as the end of the year came, and I was faced with a major test of the entire year. So I picked up the book, I went back to the beginning, and I read through the entire algebra book. And as I did that, somehow my brain got a little bit more rewired, I guess. Maybe a little bit more mature, or maybe just going over it a second time is what did the trick. But I then began to understand the algebra. And I had these aha moments. So that's what it means. Revelation. It all made beautiful sense then. Not only did the Magi find Jesus, this new epiphany of what life can be, they protected the Christ child from evil and from harm, because Herod, as I said, wanted to kill him, as you know. The Spirit of God came to them in a dream, telling them to return home. They became the first missionaries in the world of God, being in the world with the world, and for the world in a new and inclusive way. It was more than Jesus for the Jews. It was Jesus for the world. This is what the Magi represent in our lives. For those outside the faith of Abraham, they were Gentiles, the foreigners, the strangers, and even the enemies Jesus talked about later in his life that we are to love. Even they have had the epiphany the wise men experienced. We too have had and continue to have the epiphany that the Creator is not just for us, like a parent who watches a child on the sidelines playing a game. No, that's not it. God is within us, cheering us on, drawing us forward as we play every game. And before our creation, we were in God, as we will be when this brief life has concluded on this very, very tiny planet we call home, where we have been given the chance to learn one thing: how to love and how to be loved. We need to be careful because the Herods of the world are easily threatened by the Epiphanies of life, which threaten the status quo, keeping them comfortable and confident in their old understanding of life on a timeline where they grab all the gusto they can, for soon they will die and be no more. Even religious leaders and people of every faith can behave like Herod. They can be circumspect about any new thing, any new ministry, anything that comes along that threatens them, fearful that their position in life will be jeopardized by a new bright star on the horizon who has a dream. Life lived by the dream and the star is lived by the image we hold of the child within us, the infant Christ within us. Yet we are forgetful people. The smaller epiphanies of life can be one means to remember or not. We are subject to bright, shiny objects getting through to our attention, and we follow them. All bright ideas can have a dark side. I stood in Greensboro at a Best Buy store in 1994, and for the first time I saw an internet web browser being demonstrated on a computer. And I thought to myself, this is an epiphany. This will be the great changing, like the Gutenberg printing press was. All the wonderful things that would happen through this method of communication. Only good, I thought. But how naive. Families would be able to communicate, I thought, images and video of each other. They would pass to each other. They would be able to live anywhere in the world and still remain connected. Peace would come to nations whose leaders would have instant access to each other. Boundaries and barriers would drop. Peace, democracy, and productivity would bubble up. This was without doubt an epiphany of God, like fire and the wheel and the printing press. What could possibly be the downside? Technical advances like the internet can at first glance be an exciting epiphany of what God is doing in the world, working through people, Emmanuel. Yet the Herods of the world are here, and they are many. How were the Magi sure they were experiencing the true epiphany? They followed a star, and they respected a dream.